Welcome to On the Chain. This is Jeff here with co-host Chip. What is going on, Chip? What's going on, everybody out there in the On the Chain community? Now, we got a special guest coming on with us tonight or today, this morning, I should say. What day is it, Chip? I don't even know. Man, what is happening? I don't even know. This past week has been, insane. We're going to dive into crypto and geopolitics. As you guys know, we do. Big shaking up the crypto world this week. Number one, the Genius Act gets signed into law. That is massive. So we got to get into that. We're going to dive into the meaning of all of that and how that really relates to the U.S. taking another leadership role once again. And XRP skyrocketing past its all-time high for the first time in, Chip, 7 years.
Ever.
It's just crazy. Ever. Yeah, ever. Man, just so from explosive market moves to political power plays. And this isn't just a crypto rally. This is the beginning of a new era. As we all know, the dollar going digital and the world's watching. So, Chip, if you're ready to kick this thing off.
Let's go.
Welcome to On the Chain.
Right. Welcome.
Welcome,
Good
everybody.
to,
Where are you guys coming in from? Where is everybody dropping? Where you're coming in from? We know we got people going. We got the UK in the house. Yorkshire's in the house. Of course, we always have
Nick Wood.
our Aussies in the
We got
house
New
too.
Zealand. We got the Aussies
Today.
here. Man, we got people coming in from all over the place.
What's up, Sean?
Crypto
How you
Wealth
doing?
coming in from Belgium.
Good to see Sean in here too. And Sean, I'm gonna connect with you later. I'm gonna DM you and I'll connect with you later, man. I got something I want to run by you. What else we got here? Yeah, look at these Aussies. They're our best audience, man, next to the US. So, and South Carolina's in the house too. Well, Jeff, we got a very special guest with us today. It's always great when we have guests coming in here, especially when they're local guests, which is even more exciting. So if you want to just intro JC and we'll
I'm gonna bring JC in. JC and I do a lot in politics together, and JC is actually running for a local office coming up, and we've talked about the importance of local grassroots here on the show, and so JC is doing that, but at the same time, JC is pretty interconnected here, politically speaking, throughout Broward County, and so we're going to get into it. Want to get JC's feedback on what's been happening, events of the week, and he's going to bring a little bit of a different perspective. So let me bring JC on. Let me introduce JC. So here he is right here. Boom. JC, welcome to On
Jeff, how are you?
Chain.
Hey, welcome.
Chief, how are you? Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Hello to your audience.
And of course, your hat is not it's make something great. What does your hat say?
Advertising great again.
Yeah, make advertising great. It's great. You can put anything in there. It's going to work. Make crypto great again. Make the airport lounge great again, which is a brand new lounge here. So I'm just about ready to catch a flight. So I'll only be on here for a little bit, but welcome to On the Chain. Great to have you.
Oh, thank you so much. As Jeff was mentioning, all politics today are local, right? So it's all building from the bottom up, and then you have what you have at the top because of what you build at the bottom, and that's the reality of politics.
Right, but people don't know. Sometimes people miss that point, and they think it's all national, and that's where they end up with a lot of pain points where they live. So it's a very good strong point there.
Yes, it's the reality, and it's the reality around the world. So I've been working with Jeff on a couple of projects, and that's what got me. So I'm very excited to be in the program. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Yeah, great to have you. So Jeff, what do you want to kick it off?
Have you here. So what I'm thinking. Well, we're going to kick it off. I think we're going to go straight into the Genius Act. We'll talk a little bit about XRP breaking the big all-time high. It's been 7 years. Let's start with that because there's been a lot of people in the audience here that have been invested in and holding XRP. And 7 years ago, 2017, XRP hit an all-time high. When Bitcoin hit 20,000, XRP hit a high. There's some controversy over this high. Yeah, some say it was $3.40. Others say it was $3.84. But that was 7 years ago. Ever since then, we've been going through a massive, well, not ever since then, but since 2020, we went through a big shakeup, big lawsuit that involved Ripple and singled out XRP. And obviously, there were some really positive outcomes from that. But now all of a sudden we're seeing this rally, which we haven't seen with XRP for ever since that 2017 rally that lasted for like 2 weeks. And this is the first time, it hasn't been, well, back in January, February, it hit $3.31. Right now it's hovering around $3.45. Bitcoin hit all-time highs this past week of around 123, 124,000. And now we're starting to see some heat up in this space. What are your thoughts on this, Chip? I want to get your feedback. And JC's a little bit newer to crypto, so this is going to be a big intro for JC.
But he's not new to how Congress moves, which is, I think, the point we want to focus on is the fact that so much has happened in record time, right? So you got the big, beautiful bill that got passed. You got the Doge cuts that got passed. You have, I mean, it's usually, the way the founders envisioned it was Congress was supposed to be difficult to push legislation through. It wasn't supposed to happen that fast and quickly. And, you got veto power by the president. But what I see here is, let's not forget who made this possible. Let's not forget who ran on campaign promises and then delivered, right? So I think that's the big thing. And I keep reminding people on X that, Trump ran on it. He was certainly up there about crypto. And I said, well, Trump hated it back in the day. I'm like, yeah, but this is what's great about getting new information and being able to change your mind. If you hold onto these thoughts loosely enough, sometimes you're able to grab new information. It certainly is his sons and surrendered by a lot of great people on the campaign trail. And he took on a whole new vision and so his promise was he would make the US the crypto capital of the world. And we are well on our way. And so guys like Tom Emmer, who we've had on the program, thanking him because his tireless efforts, Warren Davidson, I mean, even some of the Democrats that stuck their neck out, like Richie Torres, who has to every once in a while stick his neck out before he gets it chopped off. He gets taken to the woodshed and he has to fall back in line again. But I think what we're seeing here, Jeff, is just promises made, promises, kept, and delivered on. And that's the key thing. We got 2 more pieces that are coming through of legislation or trying to get it done before the August recess, which will be incredible if they can get this done. But again, I have to say there was some trepidation on my side thinking they were going to put the big, beautiful bill past because, there's all this hoo-ha. I knew it would go through. Thought it might take a little longer. So I think we're in good hands. JC, I'd love to hear from a legislative standpoint, like what are your thoughts on what's happened so far as the movement that we've seen? And you're also on, there you go, take yourself off mute, there you go. And the movement that we've seen, especially with this brand new Congress, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think, this is all blockchain technology applied to economics. So I'm thinking like, I see it from perspectives. One, technology being applied to currency and technology being applied to a method of payment is always progress. Like new technologies coming in to facilitate transactions and facilitate or stimulate capitalism around the world is always positive. On the other hand, also I had I've been very slow on my approach to crypto. I've seen the ups and downs. I saw the FTX before that, and so I have feelings about it. I'm not like a super fan of it, but I've been following due to my background in advertising and technology, specifically when it got to analytics. We were using a company that was pioneering in the management of data, and this I forgot about the name right now, went blank, but the CEO of that company was one of the first ones to allocate crypto towards their treasury at the time. Yeah, what's the name of that company? I went blank on it, but basically the company, he was the first one and he was going up and then it came down. But interesting what I'm seeing, what's happening right now, like global companies. We just had the announcement of JP Morgan coming up with a chip that it's by themselves. It's not crypto, but it's a token, JP Morgan token. So you start seeing all of these different movements from the different technologies coming in, legislation kicking in as well to see, okay, what's more secure, what's more transparent for everybody, what's going to be beneficial for the economy, and what's better for the US. So I think there's a lot of excitement about it, and contrary moves, like we just saw Florida just saying, hey, let's make gold a new currency, let's make silver a new currency. I'm like, okay, so it looks like there's a lot of diversification through technology and also giving options to the public, like there's so much gold and metals out there that could be used to pay. So you're just diversifying, right? So you have another option to the dollar, which is interesting. I don't know. I'm not a big fan, but I'm seeing the benefit.
Or it will convert to JC. We will convert you.
Yep.
We'll bring you from the dark side, from the Democrat side over to the Republican side. Jim D says he sold a small percentage of his XRP bags at new near highs to pay down his HELOC and buy more gold and silver. And JC, you were just mentioning that,
Smart.
especially in Florida too. And Jim D is in Florida. We've had dinner with him before, but it's great to see what's going on with silver too. I mean, silver and gold, and I also think that's way underpriced. That 30, I mean, it should be around 25 to 30,000 gold. Really, I mean, it's been artificially kept low while all the governments are, gobbling it all up. So I think Jim D's onto something there.
Yeah. I think that the name of the company was Alteryx. So
Alteryx is another,
yeah. So again, like it's data intensive. So I see so well, especially in the international markets when you have an option to transact and around. I'm just concerned also from the communists and this, let's say Iran and all of these global sanctions that they use have North Korea, right? So I'm also like thinking like, how are these governments around the world that have been sanctioned and they cannot do transactions and they cannot, how they're using these currencies also as well to move wealth or to make large transactions, $10, let's say Iran buying weapons, or there's a lot of people using these non-traceable mechanisms to do deals, the sanctions that
there's another mechanism they're using to do deals too. It's called fiat currency cash.
Yeah, no, I get it. I get it.
So I think what Trump just did with Iran, I think that's how you roll. Look, I don't think sanctions have ever worked. They're always temporary. They didn't work against Russia. Russia found ways. All it did was push them to BRICS, right? And BRICS was a big conversation. Oh, they're all banding together. Meanwhile, all those countries hate each other. They all wanted, China was the one that wanted them to use their currency. And what we found that came out of that was the fact that USD is strong again. And this, having stable coins and having some legislation around stable coins, I think is what that's why they wanted to press with that first, only because of the ramifications it has. What you were talking about, JC, which is, keeping things above board and keeping some of these countries out of being able to go ahead and mint their own stable coins and have that work, right? So that was another fear when they were drafting legislation, as well as having bad actors. Jeff, what do you think about the what we've seen move through Congress so far?
Yeah,
and then
it's good.
Before we go into that, I gotta leave in like 2 minutes. I just gotta catch a flight. I'm in the Atlanta airport passing through, so I will quietly.
Yeah, why don't you? Yeah, you can quietly exit out.
I'm gonna lose it for a little bit.
But yeah, that's good. So JC, I'm glad that you're able to join us on the show today, and it's good because you're going to get a little bit of an awakening, at least an intro on the significance of crypto, kind of the direction things are going, and a lot of the things that you're bringing up. It's interesting because those are points that we've discussed, over the number of years that we've done the show. There's always been that baseline concern. That's Main Street baseline concern. And it's interesting to me because it kind of cements another point that we discuss here a lot, that the people that are into crypto have dived in and really, uncovered all the basics, all the basic intrigue around crypto, and also dispel, all of the issues that that mainstream seems to have with it still. And it's why the reason why I find that interesting, because you're, extremely, educated, involved, in depth in marketing, and as well as, politically, but yet, there's still a missing component of education on crypto. The people that are involved in crypto understand crypto. The people that aren't are still listening to kind of the general media rumor in and around crypto. And the reason why I bring that up is because until we get full Main Street buy into it and understanding of it, we're not going to see cryptocurrencies hit, the cadence, the pace that we need. But at the same time, right. At the same time,
I can tell you something about it. Where I'm seeing the results of crypto has been in politics. We just got an example of a guy that was here in Fort Lauderdale. He moved to Ohio and he was elected, Bernie Moreno. This guy got elected for Senate in Ohio, and he got, I think, total campaign was $80 million, and $40 million were in crypto. So there were crypto funds pouring crypto into his campaign, and he was using this
That's correct. Exactly.
by Democrats, and then he was able to get and tilt the Senate. Saw it in November. So I've seen the effectiveness of crypto working towards politics for sure.
It's important, from a crypto perspective, and you'll find that, a lot of the concerns that you have, we've actually overcome a lot of the concerns. The new legislation that's being introduced right now, we're building the base, in the U.S. The U.S. has been kind of an on and off acceptance of crypto, mainly because of the fact that there has been no regulatory clarity established in the U.S. market. Whereas over in Korea, over in Japan, and Singapore, as you go around the world, they've established a regulatory framework for introducing cryptocurrency into the financial institutions. In the U.S., because of that lack of clarity, and it's been introduced since 2018, right? We had Congressman Warren Davidson out of Ohio began introducing the Token Taxonomy Act, which was kind of revisiting and amending the Securities Act and the Securities Exchange Act of 1933 and 1934. So we're going back almost 100 years of financial regulation, under the SEC, but yet there's never been an understanding of how to bring in cryptocurrency into it. So it started back in 2018 with legislation, and fast forward till now, and we're only now beginning to see pro crypto legislation being passed by Congress. So that's how long it's been. It's insane that it's that far back. And so I want to bring this up, and I want to introduce a couple of videos. We'll go through these, and this is all about the Genius Act. The Genius Act really has a lot of significance because it's about stablecoin, and stablecoin that's pegged to the U.S. dollar. So there's a couple of them. Ripple, which is we can get into it. Our audience knows Ripple very well. They know the XRP digital asset very well. We talk about other assets, but with the Genius Act, it's all about providing a framework for stable coins in the U.S. market. Without that framework, without regulatory clarity at the very basic element of digital asset, it's going to be hard to develop. So I'm going to pull up a few videos. We'll kind of watch through them, and then we can comment on them as well. So this is the first with Trump here.
It's a very important act, the Genius Act. They named it after me, and I want to thank you. I want to thank you. This is a hell of an act.
Like that. That was it. I like that video. That's just a clip. Let me go to, so here's this is about a minute. I think this is kind of goes into, well, let's just play it. Let me put it up here. Here we go.
This afternoon, we take a giant step to cement American dominance of global finance and crypto technology as we sign the landmark Genius Act. I pledge that we would bring back American liberty and leadership and make the United States the crypto capital of the world, and that's what we've done. The Genius Act creates a clear and simple regulatory framework to establish and unleash the immense promise of dollar-backed stable coins.
This Genius Act will unlock American dominance in the crypto industry by creating clear rules of the road. It will update archaic payment rails with a revolutionary new payment system, and it will extend U.S. dollar dominance, like you said, globally. This is a huge promise made and promise kept by President Trump. We have a deal maker in chief, and it's because of your vision, your leadership, your determination, your skill that we're all here today. So thank you very much, President Trump.
With today's signing, the future of crypto and the crypto industry, the U.S. dollar working together is going to be stronger and bigger and better than ever before. Thank you, everybody, very much. Thank you.
That was yesterday or Thursday. Might have been Thursday. Now I'm losing track of days. But so this is really important, as we see this legislation like this, being passed, and, the significance that it means for U.S. leadership. So imagine, JC, we've been going on all this time. the previous administration, the chaos that had been caused and how it undermined us economically. It undermined our security on a global scale, and domestic security. But if we think about it from a financial perspective, the fact that even the previous administration fought cryptocurrency, they were fighting it tooth and nail to try and basically ban it. All right, they didn't want it to be accepted in the U.S. At all. I was going to say in the U.S. market, but not at all. How do you see this as a significant kind of direction for the Trump administration? Obviously, a lot of promises made, a lot of promises kept. But what's your feedback on that?
Yeah, I think again, this is going to give us more option from a perspective as consumers going into more transactions on a day-to-day basis. I think this is something that is about trust, right? So it's how the general public is going to be learning about and feeling more comfortable and the convenience of using this technology. I was some involved with this, with some of the credit card platforms in the past, and what I noticed is that they were basically competing cash. So it's called the share of wallet, and that share of wallet was always, okay, how do we compete? Credit cards are competing always against checks, and then checks were displaced by credit cards, and then they're also fighting against cash. So in this case, you have a third big block coming in, and just businesses and consumers will have to figure out a way to work this, and it's good. I mean, I think that if the government is thinking about these, and these are important decisions, 10 years, is because they're difficult decisions. These are decisions that the government want to see, they want to trace, they want to check, and then at one point they want to start getting a little bit more complicated. And it's always like that. They take 10, 20 years to figure out things, sometimes too late. But I'm sure that there's smart people in government that are making sure that this is beneficial and that it has a direct benefit for the U.S. economy. So we saw some experiments happening in El Salvador, and it was kind of interesting to see, right? That was internationally some of these other markets trying to do some of these tests. It's just interesting that the U.S. is coming in. Again, like I think as this goes in as another payment of transaction or payment method of payment or method of transaction, like why not? Like there's so many services right now that you're paying online, and there's recurring payments and services that are requesting. So making this get this circulating in the US and testing it out. So I think it's pretty important.
Yep. And hey, while we're doing that, I just want to thank Norseman for the support. We get a lot of big supporters here, and we always appreciate everybody. We have a lot of comments here as well.
With XRP, I started listening a lot. It's in the media and entertainment industry, so I've heard and seen a little bit of some startups starting to figure out, okay, how is that they're going to use XRP, for instance, when it gets to the payment of rights for music licensing, or when it gets to the payment rights for content licensing and overall. Like you can see, okay, if you can use the XRP platform, they're figuring out, okay, if there's a contract where using a specific lyric or a specific song, people can use that song and then pay, and the money will go directly to the producer and the artist that is writing that music, instead of just going to an intermediary that is going to take a percentage and then that sells it to someone else and takes another cut in the supply. So XRP and this type of technologies, I hear more and more in the entertainment industry of how it's going to be beneficial for someone to be able to be in that business, and the traceability of what's happening with the payments of those licensing rights, rather than going through the traditional way of, okay, here's an invoice and then you have to do this, and then some artists get like a very small chunk because there's no way that he can do all of this, and there's people that will do that accounting process and they keep a big chunk. So when you do the industry, entertainment industry, whether it's movies, whether it's cinema, series, music, it's gonna feel, I think it's gonna that opportunity for more artists to come in and feel that there's less people in the supply chain that are taking away what they should be getting. So I this is happening. I hear that this type of technology is starting to happen in the media industry, and people are very excited about it.
Yep. Yeah, no, that's true. And we've seen a lot of landmark progress, not just with the legislation, but just across the board, with development, which is amazing. So we've been seeing development in real estate, so tokenization of real estate, so that way you can have fractional ownership. There's a company that rolled out recently over in Dubai so that you can buy real estate in Dubai, but have fractional ownership. And we've talked about there's other legacy backed companies that have developed and built in the space for fractional ownership of stock, like Prosper. There's others in the space for real estate that do the same thing for fractional ownership of real estate. But to your point, and this is where, we get excited, because I think the direction that we're moving in is to cut out a lot of the intermediaries, because the intermediaries are just basically money grabs, right? But we needed them through the process. But now with new technology, a ledger of document, then you don't necessarily need all of the intermediaries. I think you still need the human interaction in different points of transaction, but there's a lot of points of transaction that it's just superfluous. It's just been causing a lot of issue, but it also elevates cost. And cross-border payments has probably been one of the biggest, elements where, it's extremely, extremely difficult to move money globally. And I run into it on a regular basis. I've run into problems just trying to get money to somebody domestically. Forget about globally. Globally is a whole different, world, but, to try to move money. It's crazy when you have to go through ACH and it takes 3 to 5 days, and you can have high costs. And then if you try to do a bank wire, it's supposed to be, instant, but it could be 4 hours. It could be 24 hours if there's a glitch. You never have like clear visibility to what happens during your transaction. And so we, want to establish it from an instant transaction perspective. Let me play this video. This is Brian Armstrong from Coinbase. He was interviewed, and he has some comments on this legislation as well. Let me pull this up.
There's a big consumer protection aspect to this, and the Genius Act is also very important just to update our financial system. I mean, many of your viewers may not know that every time they swipe their credit card, there's a 2% fee that the merchant does not even receive that money. And this is just bits of data flowing over the internet. We should be able to do this very inexpensively anywhere in the world, instant payments, and that's what stablecoins are now allowing. It allows people to send the US dollar anywhere in the world instantly in less than 1 second for less than 1 cent. And that's a revolution to the financial system. There's a big consumer protection aspect to this.
So to what we were just talking about, JC, and this is based on the stablecoin. So, we definitely have to make sure that we distinguish between a central bank digital currency, which, we've been extremely against. Trump is against, DeSantis is against, there's been, multiple congressmen and senators that have come out very vocal on the fact that a central bank digital currency is bad, and it gives them way too much control and power versus a US dollar backed stable coin, which is now signed into and codified into law. And to Brian Armstrong's point, and to what we were just talking about, that seamless mechanism of transaction. So imagine now, if you're selling a good and I'm buying the good from you, I can then, transact with a stable coin and send it to you. Or, you send me an invoice, there's an instant way for me to pay. I send you stable coin, transactions complete. That's it. And it's instant. There's no delay.
It's a whole problem. I know, like, for instance, wires above a certain amount, the treasury has to approve them. So you think it's going directly to the bank? I've been stuck with local US wires for 48 hours where treasury has to go in and approve every single wire. And sometimes there's batches. You're talking to both banks, and the bank says, "Oh no, it's in the process," and it's just because treasury has a batch that it's delayed, or there's a a holiday or
Right.
something. That's a reality. There's a lot of money laundering mechanisms that are in place that also delay these processes. So I think everything is pointing towards improving speed in transactions. Also, obviously, you have Visa, you have MasterCard, you have all of the American Express that are highly competitive. Have controlled their monopolies, right? They're oligopolies, so they're controlling the market, and this is directly affecting their business, and it's taking away their control of the flow of money electronically, because they've been in the business in the 1960s, right? So they don't want to let that go, and they're using all their power to have legislation that is going to protect their businesses. That's also things that are happening under the hood. Currents, deep currents are happening right now, and there's a lot of lobby from these companies trying to prevent this happening, because they're going to be losing share of wallet, and they don't want that to happen. So it's happening at certain levels, but it's going to take some time. But I think that, as we're seeing, is going to be beneficial for everybody, and it's just going to be more trust on the transactions, and I think it's really good. Again, the traceability of this, a ledger. I'm fascinated about the ledger, because it will help a lot of different industries. The other industry that I'm close to is coffee. So when it gets to coffee, for instance, if you're buying a type of coffee, if it's a specialty coffee, if it's something that it's very premium, let's say a $20, $30, $100 per pound coffee, because it has certain characters coffee, then you want to know exactly that you're drinking what they're saying. So if you make a payment with crypto, you'll be able to trace or put in that ledger more information. The guarantee, that's on the product side. I'm not even saying on the payment, but on the product side, just using the technology of ledgers, you know exactly what you're getting, and there's like a certification process where you can get. It's about traceability. So having it in currency or having it on the to guarantee the type of product you're buying, it's also amazing. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, and to your point, I think that's, and we've actually used the coffee example when
Okay.
tracing, and I'm glad you bring it up, because that's a really important component of it. When you look at the way it's done right now, and I'm sure you're pretty familiar with how things are handled with the coffee bean, from the small batch farm forward. It'd be interesting, because of your connection with that. How would you kind of describe that movement? If you go from the farm to move those coffee beans, who is the typical buyer from those typical small batch farms in South America for the coffee bean? Who's the typical buyer, and what kind of technology does that typical farm have to be able to access a larger market?
It's basically very similar to what happened in advertising or media, as I was explaining. You have the person that is creating the media. In this case, you have the farm, and then there's a supply chain that goes through until that gets into the cup of coffee here in America, right? So you have the farmer, then the farmer is getting this all produced, and it gets to association, and it's the green bean that gets there, and then the green bean could go in, and sometimes they even lose the track of that, because the farmer is going to have to make a decision of what to do with that grain. He sells it, and it's going to be mixed with something else, or he goes in and sell it directly if he knows what he has. Sometimes they don't have the allocation, so people that are buyers or specialty buyers will come into many farms, and they'll select, okay, I want this characteristic, this profile, I want this type of coffee, and they'll make a 10 times the farmer. So again, it's a matter of education. It's a matter of traceability and making sure that you're putting the labels correctly, that you're getting what is certifying that what's being produced is traced and recorded through the whole process. So it's farmer, buyer. Sometimes those buyers are buying at scale, and then they export that, import it here, then it goes to a roaster then guarantee that it's the same bean, that he's not switching the bean, right? So the bean they can be taking a low quality bean and exchanging it, or mixing that low quality bean with a higher quality bean, right? So to create financial gain or yielding. So then there's another critical point at the moment of export, the import, then the roasting, and then finally when it's going to be served at the cup. So having all of that chain of registration and certification is important. I'll be doing that in a very simple way.
And how is that done right now? It's definitely not
It's
recorded
all manually.
on
It's all
a ledger.
trust. It's a sort of it's
Yep.
handshakes. It's very very in a very classical way. So again, like it's very based on human transactions, and it's basically honor code, right? But
Mhm.
a lot of this could be improved by this type of technology for sure.
Improved and documented and that way validated, right? But it does
Correct.
it also then give the because one other thing, and this goes back years, we've and other big crypto companies talk about the unbanked. I talk about the underbanked. If we go to South America or you go to parts of Africa where a lot of parts of the world. I used to deal in India a lot. And, even there, for them to do a bank wire transfer, they have to go into the bank branch, right? It's not something they could do directly from this. It goes back a couple years, but here, everybody was banking online already. And over there, they'd have to go into the bank branch. And
No,
they do it, it's still
it's still some
very
of the markets are like that. I think some markets are better than
yeah.
others because of different reasons. But I mean, technology has finally gotten in. People are still more
Yeah.
going into the branch and making those type of transactions rather than doing it over a computer. So it depends on the bank. It's still not that well standardized, and it's part of what's the style and who's doing the transactions. And so it's very slow. It's coming in very slow. So I mean, this will just give opportunities for export to happen
Yeah.
more transparent. Or again, in the media industry, same thing. Like how do you track and how do you trace all of these rights using what at
All
what
the
moment in
royalty
time?
rights. Yep. And that's where the NFTs come in. So if you can have an NFT, that's a record of document, right? So I can show you the NFT that I own fractional ownership of real estate, or I'm authorized to get X amount of royalties, or I'm authorized to use this media, right? And I'm paying X royalties for it. I've already paid X royalties, but it's one NFT that I can then connect in, but I can also then transfer it. So right now a lot of our rights are not easily transferred. So if I own real estate, for me to transfer that real estate to you, or if I own a fractional ownership of this real estate, I can't easily transfer it to you. I can't say, hey, JC, I'm going to give you this real estate today. We'd have to go through a whole process and protocol for me to sell you this real estate. But if it's documented in a ledger, and that becomes the accepted way of transaction, I could easily say, hey, JC, I'm transferring this to you. Maybe there's another step to notarize it, but I'm sending this to you today, and I can transfer it to you via the ledger, over with using blockchain technology backed with crypto or a stable coin. And you pay me, I give it to you, and our transaction's completed. And I
I
don't need
just
any
seen a
of the
lot
other
in the
fluff in the
startup
back,
world.
which is important.
Absolutely. I'm seeing in the startup world here in Fort Lauderdale, there's an event called the Fort Lauderdale Tech Event. There's another beach as well that is happening once a month. And I see a wave of new endeavors, new startups, people that have come from banking, guys coming from fintech. They're all trying to experiment with titling in real estate. So I've
Yeah.
seen at least 3 or 4 companies there, and I think Florida changed some legislation that is enabling a lot of companies nationally. I think every state is legislating differently when it gets to the titles and the
Dependent.
management of the transaction. But I think that's why we see a lot of these guys coming to Florida. And it's exciting when you can make a process much more transparent, simpler, faster, and less less bureaucratic. Let's put it that way. So,
Right.
and saving money. So I think I forget the name of the 2 companies. I've seen at least 2 companies here. There's I'm gonna have a small office in a church space here in downtown Fort Lauderdale, and amazing to see they come in and they do a lot of real estate education, and then they're talking about how the ledger is helping everybody to keep custody of who has what at what point in the transaction. So it's pretty
Yeah.
amazing. It's happening right now in our time. We're seeing this happening. It's just amazing the way that this is all to move ahead.
And I would love to say it's happening fast, but it's now things are starting to happen fast, but it's, it's been a while, as we've seen, everything kind of ramping up, to where we're at. Uh, and so, I do want to go through, let's switch over, slightly different topic. And let me see here. So
Yeah, Jim,
this,
Jim was
yeah, go
mentioning
ahead.
Jim was mentioning here about the tokenized fractional owned real estate. That's the one that I also saw a couple of companies talking about that. That's,
Yeah.
I don't know. That seems to be something really interesting for people to come in and share property. Yeah, that's happening. So I think that's really cool. But that's one of the companies, they call it like a pizza. It's like a pizza property. Then you can go in and put your money there. So I think that's ingenious.
Yeah, and that is good. So the key here and what he's talking about is how do you transfer it to an heir if the fraction owner loses. This is where, and this is an interesting, conversation overall, because this is like crypto enthusiasts who have been involved in cryptocurrency from the beginning believe that you should keep your cryptocurrency off central exchanges and keep them on a cold storage wallet that only you have access to, and you're
Correct.
responsible basically for your keys, right? So if you lose your key to that wallet, you lose all access to it. It also is very difficult then to transfer that over to an heir. This is where, and I think, with Chip and I are on the same page on this, and I'm sure you'd be on the same page as well with this, but you can tell me. But I believe that this is the one point where we need a centralized company, software, bank, crypto exchange, whatever it is, to help mainstream or Main Street users manage their digital asset and manage their tokenized fractional share ownership. It needs to be held by
A custodian. You need a custodian, a third party.
Right. There's that chat is
Institutional custody.
There you go. That's the word, right? So we need that element of it. As a crypto enthusiast, people are super passionate now, and it's crazy, JC, because over the past number of years, there have been some big in the space. There's one, he lost about $125 million worth of Bitcoin because he had no access to his hard drive. And it's happened many times over. People threw it out in the garbage, or whatever it is. I don't think the majority of people want that kind of they want that kind of responsibility, right? They want that institutional custody. Do you agree with that?
Even with institutional custody, there's so much money. I don't know what's the number, but billions of dollars already that are sitting somewhere that the state of Florida or any state has to be pushing back and saying, hey, you have to claim this money, right? Sitting somewhere from bank accounts. It happens. It's natural. It's life, right?
That's it.
That's happening all over.
That's right. Exactly. So, all right, let's see. So I want to bring this up. This is just kind of a segue because I want to get into talking about what Tulsi Gabbard brought up. I think this is really important. It's kind of the direct things that we've experienced over the past number of years in terms of what our country had to go through, what Trump had to go through. So we'll get into that. Before we get there, though, I want to bring this up. Chip had posted this, and I'm glad he did. This was, a short video clip. This is Elizabeth Warren on Danny's Politics. And this just kind of gives you an idea of what we deal with when we're dealing with people on the left. But here, let me put this up real quick.
He said, we've got a problem with entire food deserts where people can't get access to grocery stores. Said, I'd like to take a look at whether or not we can have some kind of, like we do on military bases, you have some kind of support from the city government that says we're going to get some food grocery stores in areas that right now are food deserts. And by the way, it's a new and fresh plan for New York City, but it's been tried in other cities around the country and has had some real successes. So what I hear Mamdani saying is, I want to try things to make it work for working families. And you know what? This is how democracy works. A lot of people in New York City said, that sounds good to me. I'd rather try that than any of the other alternatives available to me.
So let me tell you an anecdote on that. It makes me think about 2 years ago, I was working in Venezuela, and I go there, and one of our clients had to sell products to supermarkets. They had to sell to different, but there was one in particular that were called bodegas, and those bodegas were managed by the government. This was like in the early 2000s. I'm like, I've seen anything like that. That's really strange. And look what happened in Venezuela, right? Like there was already control. It just became a communist country. Like it's exactly what happened. It was exactly what we see in Venezuela. It's exactly what we're seeing in other markets where there's a desperate attempt from the government to control the food from their citizens. It's crazy what he proposes.
Well, that's it. And so, and this kind of shows how unhinged many on the left are, you know, where they can't even really reflect on, you know, where, you know, well, you know, just the idea. Well, there's a number of other, you know, issues that she had brought up. One is the democracy. You know, the Democrats love talking about, you know, this isn't how you operate in a democracy. They kind of forget that we live in a constitutional republic, and you know, it's not majority rule. Democracy would be majority rule, and you can, you know, and everyone gets crushed. And you know, however they want to manipulate the data, they can manipulate the data for outcome. You know, especially if you're not getting, you know, the people to turn out to vote. You know, or you know, however the cards might fall from that. But hey, let me put this up. I thought this was kind of cool. Did you see the controversy over the Megatron? There is a CEO.
Yeah, but before you go to that one, what's happening in New York? That's how this is affecting South Florida, right? So right now we're seeing an avalanche of people coming down from New York to. I met like with 5 people already in down Lauderdale. They're just desperate, like looking and searching for a house or an apartment to move right here because they're just fed up. Like this,
New York,
this situation right now is tilting, and they're desperate to get out because they cannot take it anymore. Especially like people that have been more into the center right. We have to get out. We cannot stand this. Is going to be a debacle. They don't want to suffer again another battlefield from now until November. So they're like, this is bad news for you. It's bad news for the U.S. Communism is inside the house. Communism and only 9% of Democrats came in to vote. Listen to that. So only 9%. And what I heard also is that from that 9%, 85% of those Democrats that were taken to vote were taken by George Soros. George Soros came directly for trucks and buses to get them to vote. They're desperate. That's and they're trying to figure to get control of the city.
That's it. Exactly right. So I don't know if you saw this one. You know, there's that whole controversy, you know, over there was a couple at a concert and they got caught out. I don't know if you saw this.
Yeah. Oh, look at these two. All right, come on. You're okay? Oh, what? Either they're having an affair.
Oh my God,
love
that was funny.
People are so fast. But actually, here's the real one. Hang on a second. Let me pull this up real quick. Shoot. Hang on a minute. Make sure I get this right one. Oh, here we go. Hang on. Oh, here we go. Here's this one. Let me see if I can pull this one up real quick. Hang on. Here we go. Oh, here it is. People are so quick. I don't know how people come up with stuff so fast. It's funny. It's just so funny. All right, let me go. So I want to get into. Let me bring this up. Here it is. Oh, I don't know. This is and have you seen there's protesters everywhere, right? These protesters are absolutely nuts. And in Florida, DeSantis signed a law, basically stating that if there's protesters on the streets threatening you, that you don't have to stop your car to put your life in danger, right?
Oh my God. Yeah, I heard about that.
Yep. But here's this. This was Tour de France. The protesters, these crazy protesters. I mean, they're everywhere, and they're really, I think, they're getting to people's last nerves. But look at this guy. This is how you deal with them. That's how you handle protesters. Look at that. Security gets rid of them. It's getting out of hand. Totally out of hand with the protesters. I'm seeing them, just what they do to people, at this point, and kind of definitely, putting people's lives in danger on a regular basis. And we just can't deal with these protesters.
They're organized, they're organized, they're funded, they're coordinated, and they have clear objectives. This does not happen organically.
Correct. Yep. And it's interesting too, because now there's more and more information coming out that even post October 7th, right? We had the atrocities on October 7th with Hamas massacring Israelis in the streets. And then there was a coordinated effort on October 8th before there was any response, before there was any announcement. There was a coordinated effort that was already of printed media, printed signs. Protesters were out in the streets already. There was an entire publicity campaign, marketing campaign in social media that was already condemning Israel. And this was a day later, a day after October 7th. So by October 8th, it had all rolled out. So to your point, financed, organized, and determined across the board. The agenda, is an attack of my opinion. It's not just, that wasn't just focused and centered on Israel. It's more on what you were talking about, what happened in Venezuela and what they want to have happen here. It's a collapse of Western style style politics. It's a collapse of our republic. And we're seeing it, they're continuously attacking us in the US, but we're starting to see, that they're gaining more momentum on the left over in Europe, as they're Islamifying a lot of the regions with the Islamist agenda. And then here we're being attacked by the socialist, communist agenda, and they're using a lot of these street protesters, to try to sway public opinion. But it seems like, to me, it's also backfiring.
Yeah, these are hybrid wars. These are hybrid war scenarios where it's not just kinetic, but it's the public opinion battlefield, trying to win the public opinion as quick as possible. Because at the end of the day, the public opinion and the people that vote are going to pick up the phones and call the Congress, call the senators, and they're trying to do that, influence the United Nations, influence congressmen. So it's a hybrid war. So it's PR, it's marketing, and it's well funded. Sometimes more money spent on that than even the kinetic efforts that are being done on the operation that was done over there. So this is something that we've detected and we understand, and now we have to fight back on those two grounds, not just kinetically, but also PR and the public opinion. And that's exactly what you're doing on these on this podcast, right? You're informing the public opinion, so we don't eat everything that the mainstream media intentionally or non-intentionally is presenting us. We have to learn how to digest and discern what is being put in front of us, because at the end of the day, if we don't do that, then we're just going to be amplifying fake media or false information to benefit someone that is manipulating the public opinion. So I think what you guys are doing is fantastic, and this is why your audience is very grateful from what I'm seeing here of what you guys are doing, because you're informing the public opinion, so we don't get fooled by some of these large organizations, intelligence organizations, terrorist organizations like the one we saw coming from Hamas. Right? They're terrorists. They're not. They're terrorists, and this is what they do. They do acts kinetically, and then now they've become very good also manipulating and making stunts, huge stunts on the public sphere or use of media for their purposes. That's what they do for a living.
That's it. And we've seen this embraced by the by mainstream media. It's not just at one point. People might allude to the fact that they were kind of extreme actions by groups that kind of operate around the periphery. But now, for the past, I don't know how many years has it been now, Trump's first administration, through 4 years of Biden, where mainstream media has twisted the narrative. But I think you can reflect back even years before that, how the New York Times would write articles, how, all these different local publications would write articles years. I can personally, I'll track the New York Times back to the early 90s, where it was at that moment. I remember I was in undergrad at the time, and one of the courses that I was taking, the requirement was that we had to read articles in the New York Times. It was a political course, and we'd have to come prepared to have conversation. But he's like, you have to read the New York Times every day, so everyone has to have a subscription to it. But I don't know if the guy was getting paid on the side by the New York Times, but it was such garbage even back then. You'd read it, and you would see the twist and the slant in the writing, and I'm sure maybe there were some good writers for it. But it was at that moment where you could see that where the narrative was starting to shift.
Absolutely, and this
at
is
least for me, it was early 90s.
It's not the only country. This happens around the world. Every country. I mean, remember, politics and media are intertwined, right? So one lives out of the other one. So this is not the only country where this happens, and it's not just the last thing happening for 100 years. Right. So no matter where you look at it, for one side or the other, media is always going to be tempted. There's call about editorial neutrality, but we're human beings, and the influence of politics and power into media are always going to be biasing. We had the best example of that is what happened in Mexico with political movement called PRI, and Televisa. So Televisa is monopoly in media around the world, which, by the way, they're very influential with the World Cup. We'll talk on probably another chapter about that and how did they build. But then they were so powerful that they were just cementing every election. They were basically helping one party stay in power for 40 years. And it happens. That's how powerful media is. Some people call it the fourth power. Other people that are in politics would call it the first power, because it could put someone up or take them down of whatever position. So it's that reality. And as citizens, regular citizens, we have to understand how to discern what's coming and being thrown at us, and then make our calls. Watch all the perspectives and then make our own calls on what's happening, because it happens. And now social media is the same thing. This was invented back then, beginning of the century. PR, influence, media. We saw it in World War I, World War II. This comes back from the World Wars, and I perhaps even before that, we don't track it, but there's always a way to inform and influence. And as long as there've been government and there've been and before that, I'm sure it was happening voice to voice, person to person, peer to peer. So it's always been like that. And now we just have different platforms, different technologies making this happen. And where there's a political party, or it's an institution, or it's someone like the Democrat, which is very sophisticated on this, much more than the Republican Party for sure. It's happening, and or a terrorist group like Hamas. They have PR machines, right? They know how to manipulate global media on their favor and sway the opinion. So we see it, and we have to give it to the Democratic Party. They have a big media apparatus supported by a lot of people.
Yeah, and one of the things that you're referring to that dates back actually to somewhere in the 1890s. So it was before the turn of the century of the 1900s. There was something called yellow journalism. I'm sure you've heard of that. So,
Yes.
and that was specifically, featuring sensationalized, exaggerated articles to bring readers in, and that would, impact people's opinions, and so that was at least documented and coined, back in the late 1890s. So think about, how long this has been occurring. It's probably happened before then as well. But that's at least where, to current record, we can date back and say, okay, here's where it started. The yellow journalism, at least there's a terminology for it.
Amarillismo, we call it amarillismo. I don't know who came up with the term, but yeah, it's like that. It's very powerful.
Yep, exactly. Hey, let me put this up. So this is I think this is massive news. And this is something that has been alluded to. This is going to be the hoax, right? This is the Russia hoax. This is Tulsi Gabbard. People say, okay, Trump came in. We want we want the receipts. We want people to be held accountable for things that happen. We still want to see people held accountable for what happened, even under Fauci, with COVID and all of that. But let's go back, to Trump's first administration, 2015, 2016, when he's running for office. And then it was just Russia, all this entire hoax that had been orchestrated to try to take Trump down. 4 more years from 2016 through 2020, more conspiracy, impeachments, everything to take him down. And he was a threat really on a global scale. At that point, those that were the power holders, the deep state, obviously were going to fight back, still fighting back. But I think, this is probably one of the biggest things that is coming out at this moment, which is who is actually behind this, this whole hoax. What exactly happened? She's declassifying, but who created it? Who's behind it? And what's exactly happening? Let me just play this real quick.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sean. This is such an important issue, and I just want to start by saying that this is an issue that is important to every single one of us as Americans. This is not a partisan issue. It has to do with the integrity and the strength of our democratic republic. And it lays out this over 100 documents that you're referencing that I released, declassified and released, spells out in great detail exactly what happens when you have some of the most powerful people in our country directly leading at the helm, President Obama and his senior-most national security cabinet, James Comey, John Brennan, James Clapper, and Susan Rice, and others, essentially making a very intentional decision to create this manufactured, politicized piece of intelligence with the objective of subverting the will of the American people, who in November of 2016 delivered a historic victory to President Trump, defeating Hillary Clinton. And President Obama and his team, their goal was to essentially not accept the decision of the American people and to use this manufactured, politicized intelligence as a means to enact what would become essentially a years-long coup against President Trump. You have gone into great detail over these years of what the effects of this document and this decision have resulted in. Obviously, a years-long Mueller investigation that cost taxpayers almost $40 million, 2 congressional impeachments, endless smears and attacks against not only President Trump, but his family. He had senior members of his team who were investigated, some arrested and jailed. We had heightened and increased tensions between the United States and Russia. The list goes on and on about the consequences of President Obama and his senior cabinet members politicizing intelligence once again, and I say these words very clearly, to enact what was essentially a years-long coup, subverting the will of the American people in that election in November. Now, you reference this this president's daily brief document.
I think, she said some really important things there. One of them that stands out as a coup. What are your thoughts?
I think, again, big operation, a lot of money, very clear strategy. How do we take the president down using intelligence brief? How do you use all of this to politicize and then bring someone down? So definitely is an attempt to do that. And we saw it in action back. It was very effective, and that's the way they do it, and that's part of, unfortunately, it's been done forever this. I don't know if that's ever going to be able to be completely clean out of the system, because as long as there's strategies, as long as there's information that can be manipulated, we think this is very complicated. And what I don't see is people going to jail, right? Like we see these huge operations, millions of dollars. There's PR agencies and strategists working on this. Hurt anybody going to trial for this one specific. So it's like, how do you handle this? It's unfortunate. I'm sure it's not going to be the last time it tries something like this. I think what it started with Nixon was very clear, right? That's Watergate. That's one of them. That at least that it's very well known. But we see this type of things, and it's just part of politics. And I don't know what to tell. Like, she at least out, and she's being very transparent, bringing that up to the surface. But it's always been like that. Like, it's unfortunate. Like, there's a very well-known case, even in sports. Like, when you see things that are happening for the FIFA World Cup, who's going to take it? There's massive amount of monies that get poured into it to create false perception, to manipulate, to just make sure who is going to get the next World Cup, which represents billions and billions of dollars. In this case, for politics, there's people just specializing on these type of things, and it was, unfortunately, it was a bad moment in our history of the country, and I don't know what's happening right now in terms of how can we prevent these things from happening in the future.
Yeah, that's a a solid question, or point, to make. How do we prevent it? How do we stay aware of it? I think a lot of people have gone through many years ignoring politics. The one thing that that impresses me every day from our audience, and just in general over the years we've done the podcast, is how many smart people we have, that come into our chat. We learn so much just from reading the commentary to get it with that engagement. Then I think about everybody's sphere of influence. How many people do you influence around you? Can we use our knowledge and information to help educate people and change people's perception on being active, taking action, similar to what you and I talk about in some of our meetings. It's like, hey, it's great, come to a meeting, but you can't just come to listen to a speaker and leave again and not get involved in some way, shape, or form. But involvement is number one. I mean, for years, I remember just going, talking to people, and they would say basically along that line, well, it's politics. I don't like it. I don't get involved. I'm not I don't even go out and vote. Why would I vote? My vote doesn't even mean anything, right? It's not going to change anything. And so this is years and years and years in the making, that people feel like their voice doesn't matter. They'd rather go to a sporting event, or they'd rather sit home and watch football on TV, which is awesome. I mean, that's like, people want it, you want to be able to live your daily life, but at some point you also have to say, look, I've got to get actively involved, right?
It was the Russian
numbers, right?
It was what? It started the same day Trump got into office, right? The next day they started to, it was a whole just come after him and try to knock him down. So I think that was the same. And then the second moment they did this was January 6th, right? Same. If you see the configuration, if you see the modus operandi, what happened for that, and then you see January 6th. I was watching January 6th when he was talking a newscast, or he was just presenting there. I'm thinking like, they're gonna use this for something, because it was a lot of people coming into the, and you see them coming in. I'm like, I live in South America. When you see people coming into the Capitol, they come with weapons and they come and burn down anything. That's a real demonstration of violence. I saw what happened here. I'm like, okay, is this something? But I saw it and it was like, no, like people, weapons or anything. But it's just like, it's like a great opportunity to build some sort of narrative out there. And I'm like, hopefully they don't use this for something. And they did. And it was just like one thing after. There was one person that died. That was unfortunately, but I'm like, okay, are they gonna do something with it? And then boom, 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 it just escalated, like throwing money and media, and they created it's a crisis, and there's a well-known
narrative
guy out there that says it's a crisis. They cannot let this. They're experts at that. They create doubt. They're experts, and they're just professionals, and millions of dollars put down to narratives, those false narratives, and that's.
But you know what made that easy, right? You know what made that easy for them? The January 6th event was that they had the Summer of Love, or whatever they called it, where we had BLM and Antifa rioting in the streets, burning city blocks down, taking over a city block, breaking windows. They were making it, invading street spaces like we see now. These, those people that are supposedly protesting for the Palestinians, they come out in the streets and they harass people. Came right from the top echelon of government, with Maxine Waters and others that say, get in their face, go out and protest. Don't if they're at a restaurant, get in their face in a restaurant. If they're at a gas station, they basically, released the hounds. They wanted their foot soldiers out on the streets harassing people, right? The one thing that you don't do. They began their coup at that point when the congressional representatives said, this is what we want you to do. The narrative started. But the thing is that, so, I don't remember when was that Summer of Love, and when they, we saw everything happening in Portland, and then we saw it in New York, and we saw it in Seattle, and then we saw it like all over the place. And that's where Antifa started to rise up. And then we had the Proud Boys, and I watched every single live stream YouTube video with the Proud Boys, when they came out, and they were out in the streets fighting Antifa and defending the streets, against BLM and everything that those guys were doing. And there's the Proud Boys. The mainstream media immediately singled out the Proud Boys as the ones that were the ones doing the injustice, where they were the problem, but they were the ones. And it was so crazy watching all these narratives unfold. Jim, we're actually not doing a Yeti this show, unfortunately. There was a technical glitch with the song. I was trying to put this song together and ran into a technical glitch with it, with the platform. So tomorrow, though, we will have a special JC, normally we give away an NFT. We give away one of our Badass Yeti NFTs, and we have a song that we put with it, and we create a whole video segment. But I ran into some glitches trying to get that together for this morning. But tomorrow night we'll definitely do that. But so that Summer of Love, that became the, was you remember the reporters came out and said it's all peaceful, nothing's happening, and you saw the buildings burning down behind them. Then when they went out and burned the church down in DC, there are all these things that were going on, being orchestrated, that was then emblazoned in the minds of anyone who watched news, right? Anybody who tuned into the news saw the chaos in the streets. They saw the buildings burning. They saw the violence happening, right? They saw all of this stuff going on. And then come to January 6th, now it was an easy correlation, because now people are like, oh my God, look at the violence in the streets. Look at everything that's been happening over these past couple of years, right? And now they want to relate that. It was an easy relation to January 6th. So now they've created this narrative, and now we get to January 6th, and to your point, they're like, oh my, and the mainstream media came out, but like you're saying, the one element that was missing, where are the weapons? If you're going there to take down the government, you're going there with weapons. There wasn't one person in that entire crowd, any of them, that were there with weapons, and they weren't doing anything. There was no burning of buildings. There was no looting. None of that was happening. There was one guy that went around breaking windows, and and supposedly that guy was already undercover, right? And so then the question comes, why were there so many, and they was all in the congressional hearings. They said, well, how many FBI agents were embedded in the crowd? How many were there? Oh, we can't tell you. But yet there's scores of videos where you see all these guys in press shirts and khaki pants with a brand new MAGA hat on, and everything brand new, like perfect. And those guys go, into the crowds, and there's, a lot of video of them. And then there's a lot of missing video, from that time period. And there was one woman that was killed. And what happened with that? She was unarmed. All those people were unarmed, but yet she was shot, and yet at the same time, the police opened up the doors. So there's all this stuff being orchestrated, and they took that narrative, like you said, they twisted that narrative. And it's amazing to me where we had been, for 4 years. And, as they invoked under COVID, to shut everything down, and how detrimental that was to the human psyche, from a psychology perspective, to have people locked up in their homes. I never stayed in my house one day that entire period of time. There wasn't one. There's no way we were going to get that injection. I was surrounded by the right doctors. I know my science. They know their science. There's no way we're going to buy into that conspiracy. We sent our son to summer camp immediately. After that, I wanted him to be in school, so I get it. You want to take a 3-week hiatus like it's a hurricane, everyone acted like it was a hurricane. That was like, hey, we're ready to go back to business, Unfortunately, JC, for us in Florida, we're back to business within a couple months. Michigan, New York, all these other states, they had their restaurants closed for a year, and the chaos that ensued in these leftist states.
Dark moments in the country. There were very dark moments.
Yeah, we can't forget it, but we can't forget about that, because those people can't go into silence, right? We can't let them just kind of bleed back into the framework. We have medical professionals, government officials. There's many of them that still need to be held accountable for what they did. Right. But yet, step by step, and I kind of went down this path because you brought up, where's the accountability, right? Why aren't we seeing people arrested, or why aren't we seeing people being put in front of a court? Then you have to then question.
We haven't seen courts, right? We haven't seen courts in action because no one is suing, no one is coming after anybody. It's the government. No one wants to go after the government, with exceptions, right?
So
I think
there's
people going after Fauci, but not a lot of people are doing things, and they have like privilege. Fauci got protected, right? Didn't he? Like he got immunity or something.
Yeah, that's right. It's
crazy,
crazy. I
man.
mean, the whole thing. Then you have to question the activist judges.
Yeah. What
What
happened
about
with
the
the
activist
governors,
judges?
to the governors that shut down everybody in jail, put them into jails for 1 year, right? Like we had DeSantis over here, but what about the other states? One has to talk about that and be responsible. Like, I don't know. I think there's immunity for a lot of these people, right? Because they're government, they're immune. It's just fortunate.
They shouldn't be. You know, there were a lot of medical professionals who came out, talking about, again, saying that what is happening is contrary to real science. Wearing masks on an airplane, that was the stupidest thing. I would go on a plane, everyone's wearing their mask. I would sit there, if I was in economy comfort or first class or whatever, I would sit there drinking my bottle of water. You'd have your mask thing. I wouldn't wear a regular mask. I just had a thing you put over your face. I'm like, this is ridiculous. None of this is blocking anything. But the craziest was in restaurants and airplanes, right? In an airplane, they're like, well, when you eat your snack, take the mask off, take your drink of water, eat your snack, and then you got to put your mask back on. Right. And I said, the moment the entire plane took their masks off the first time, it's over. Right. For what did you just accomplish? You accomplished nothing. First of all, the mask doesn't do anything to begin with. But secondly, as soon as you have people take it off because they eat their snack, it's over and done with. Right. And it was the same thing in the restaurants. If you were walking in the restaurant, you had to wear a mask. If you were seated in the restaurant, you could take your mask off. It was like these people, like all rational thought was just thrown out the window. These people are insane, just absolutely insane. And yet these people just bled back into society like everything is normal. But I think we're seeing the ramification of it. I think there's a lot of people that have suffered some form of, PTSD trauma from locking themselves in their homes. It's crazy. It's just crazy.
Yeah, and there's people still recuperating from that. I mean, I think the spike of mental health, as you mentioned, problems, I see a lot of people still affected, dealing with the impact of that 3 years ago or 5 years ago. So it's a reality, and hopefully we don't forget about that. And because it could happen again, I think with this, something like this could repeat, right? 100 years ago, hopefully more, but. We learned a lot of lessons, and it was amazing that we survived it. The ones that we went through it, and hopefully, I think we'll become smart. We become 10 times smarter on how to deal with this type of things. So again, I still in my mind think that of this was obviously coming from China. It was probably it was a leak, and then the leak again. It was used to in one way or another to affect the country and many countries. I mean, I think that's why all the administrators in place lost their seat, kind of. If you see around the world, I haven't run the stats, but a lot of the governments that were dealing with COVID were a war scenario. So as you're concentrated on that, and people are thinking, okay, is this the correct person to go after? They couldn't campaign, they couldn't defend their campaigns or positions. So a lot of these guys, a lot of presidents around the world suffered and lost and got out of that seat because of COVID. So playing definitively against them, because it was a war scenario. It was very, very difficult, and it had a cost for a lot of the candidates running that year or that cycle.
Yeah. To your point, last video that I want to put up, and I think this is also, kind of very timely. Let me, 1 second. Here we go. It's Pete Hegseth.
Earlier this week, we were alerted to a potential vulnerability in our DoD computer systems, and we've been checking into it ever since. It turns out that some tech companies have been using cheap Chinese labor to assist with DoD cloud services. This is obviously unacceptable, especially in today's digital threat environment. Now, this was a legacy system created over a decade ago during the Obama administration. But we have to ensure the digital systems that we use here at the Defense Department are ironclad and impenetrable. And that's why today I'm announcing that China will no longer have any involvement whatsoever in our cloud services effective immediately. And at my direction, the department will also initiate, as fast as we can, a 2-week review or faster to make sure that what we uncovered isn't happening anywhere else across the DoD. We will continue to monitor and counter all threats to our military infrastructure and online networks. And I want to thank all those Americans out there in the media and elsewhere who raised this issue to our attention so we could address it. And that's why we're talking to you today. As the president would say, thank you for your attention to this matter, and God bless our warfighters. I'm going to sign that memo right now, initiating that review.
Can you believe that? I mean, I believe it, but what the? Can you imagine they're using Chinese cloud servers?
Yeah, I remember. I think it was 5-6 years ago that we had the Chinese servers and I forgot the brand, but they were kicked out of the U.S. There was a big battle about that, big fight about that, and that of things. I mean, we're living in this modern era where there's so many processes and things that have been outsourced into China that we have to be careful. Probably this is not the only case. I'm sure that if they do an audit, they're going to find more and more stuff. It's like trying to use all of these public people using TikTok, right? Like, okay, so everything is going through into China and coming back. So that's the reality. I don't think we're in a kinetic war, but we are somehow in an economical war with China right now. And we're competing technologically. We're competing. There's espionage. There's things going on. Currency, exports, imports, tariffs. And if you remember before COVID hit, that's exactly what the US was, right? It was a direct fight with China, and then boom, we had COVID. So the timing of COVID was just very bad for the relationship between both countries. I think definitively the US was involved with what was going on in that lab, because if it wasn't the matter, we would have gone to war and come after them, right? But it happened, and that's what's happening, and we have to be careful. This is not surprising. This is not surprising.
It also pushed China, like you said. We're in a head-to-head with China at the time. We're the single hegemonic superpower in the world. There's nobody competing with us for many years since the collapse of the Soviet Union, and so here's China rising up, trying to take a position as a major superpower to offset, our superpower status as the sole hegemonic superpower. So it was at that moment that China got a leg up financially. Their economy was still on shaky ground at the time. They were established, but they weren't established, right? So they're still having a lot of currency manipulation. There are a lot of things going on behind the scenes, as there still are, but their influence wasn't 100% there yet, because they didn't have they didn't have that financial foothold yet in many different markets. So they weren't accepted yet. So it was an interesting dynamic, because with COVID, all of a sudden China rose to a completely different level, right? All of a sudden, and a lot of it had to do with them being globally recognized as a true manufacturer of product to be able to support the global economy. So they could never, in any other scenario, have been able or given an opportunity to try to prove to the world that they could be a global supplier, meaning under Chinese manufactured brands, not under other people's brands. So for many years, they've been stealing the intellectual property rights of many different companies, and they've allowed that to happen. Everybody knows it happens. All the fake products coming out of China are, theft of intellectual property right. But what happened is that with COVID, all of a sudden, Chinese brands started taking center stage as they started selling ventilators, medical products, masks. They converted warehouse after warehouse after warehouse into manufacturing facilities for PPE. And then all of a sudden, everyone's like, China is the only one that has operational factories. China's the only one that can supply the world with masks. China's the only one that can supply the world with gloves. Oh, by the way, everything's manufactured in China, but now it's not, whoever, I don't know, let's say it's J&J. I don't know who the main manufacturer of gloves are, but now all of a sudden, every company in the United States had a shortage supply of their own branded masks and gloves and PPE. China enters and they say, we have tons of it. We have warehouses filled with masks, right? All those 3M masks or whoever, the primary maker of those masks, they were out. There were no N95s, no whatever, types of masks. China all of a sudden had everything, and they were supplying the world with everything. That was the major step up that they needed to get global recognition. Now, all of a sudden, they're a major player at center stage, economically speaking, product supply chain speaking. Now they've been brought down a little bit, but if you go to Amazon now and you do a search for a product, there's lots and lots of products out there under Chinese branded names, good or bad. There's some really great products that come out of China, and then there's a lot of garbage that comes out of there, but that's the thing, is that it elevated them, and it happened. It sped up the process. At some point they might have gotten there, but it sped them up, maybe decades early. Maybe it was 1 decade early, maybe it was 15 years, maybe it was 2 decades early, but it sped up the process of getting them. And so that's where, did they take advantage of the situation, or was it already plotted and planned, that they would collapse the global economic system for them to get that foothold? So that's where, it's got to be studied even more in depth. But you're right, we have been in a battle with China, and they're the only other power holder right now that could be considered, a competitor to our sole hegemonic superpower.
I think it was similar to what happened with Japan in the 80s. Like all of these economies start copying. So it's like a certain progress on evolution. Like they start copying and then going into their own stuff. But I think that was similar to what happened with Japan. And now with China, I think things. One is the labor is so cheap, right? Like you have so much people. So for 1 hour here, if you get $15 per hour, you can pay 1 day for $15. In China, you can pay 1 week for $15, right? A Chinese employee will work 1 week for $15. That's amazing. So it's a factor of 1 to I don't know, 100 or 1,000. I don't know. It's huge. So that by having that, have a competitive advantage upon the U.S. It's a reality. But also, when we were able to see through COVID, one of the positive things of COVID, unveiled the strategic problem in the supply chain we had as a country, and as the Western world had strategically. I think they were producing weaponry or ammunition for us. They were producing all the medicine. So you start unveiling all of these web of supply chain that is interconnected with China, but then there's strategic things you cannot be producing there. It's fine if you're producing a toy, right? There's no one is going to not strategic, but if you're giving them the power of weapons, the power of pharma, and you're producing over there, that's causing trouble. That was like mind-blowing, that there's no constraints for some of these things happening over there. So it's like, how do we prevent this? I think the government took action. I believe there's a lot of things put in place, but it's just like crazy that this happened. And if it wasn't for COVID, we would have been able to see all of this. I think COVID helped us to understand this in a much better way, which was something that probably Kissinger started back then, and then Bill Clinton enacted. And we saw Latin America, coming from Latin America, we saw a big economical debacle in Latin America. We were exporting products from Mexico, from Colombia, from Argentina into the U.S. Now, all of a sudden, that got shut down, and all of that was transferred China. So the countries in Latin America got affected by China. So I think that's also something that should be around the minds of these import exporters. Like, okay, how do we reactivate the neighbors? How do we reactivate and create jobs down there in South America, so we have a stable down there so they don't have to come up here. We support them with more manufacturing. It's right there. You take a truck and your product is here 24 hours later. You don't have to wait 2 weeks for a ship to come in from Beijing over here or from wherever it's coming. So I think there's a whole thing that we put in. It was put into game in early 1990s by the Clinton administration that we need now to figure out, okay, how do we correct some of this? We had the tequila effect in because what happened was that all of that major economical throughput was taken out of Mexico and then moved to China. Everybody went to China. So now Mexico has recouped from that, but I think, and then the other thing too, like you have a lot of Chinese companies sitting on the border in Mexico. So they're figuring out ways and finding loopholes to bring product that is Chinese, and they say it's Mexican, but in reality it's Chinese. So I think the current situation with the tariffs have been able to control that. It's like you can see very clearly on that strategy that they're trying to put pressure on in Mexico, not for the Mexican products, for the Chinese products coming out of through Mexico, or the ones in Vietnam. The tariffs for Vietnam, 150, whatever it was, 90% of the exports of Vietnam are Chinese products. So that's against China, right? So I think the government is smarter and moving more like a business than a government. So I think that dynamic was injected by Trump definitively, and he's figuring out all of these connected transactions that are there, that are a reality, and he's trying to react to that. I think that's the correct thing to be doing right now. After 30 years since Clinton, there hasn't been something put in place to counter a little bit the trajectory of what China is going on. So I think these were moves, and both from a strategy perspective, political, economical. I know it sounded very controversial, but it was definitely the correct move. This country has to be more on top of their game when it gets to imports and exports.
Agreed. No, definitely. We have to be very much aware of that. And it is interesting because a lot of things came to light during COVID, the good and the bad, right? We saw all the different power plays very, very clearly. Unfortunately, a lot of people slip back into, just let's go back into regular every day and forget what they learned. But enough people learned, what they needed to learn to make sure that things do change. Like Vincent saying, hopefully we learned, we can't have medication produced in other countries, especially not a country that could be considered a potential enemy of our country, right? With what they're trying to accomplish. Jim D said, and this is really poignant, and it's something that has, I've known, for many years as well. And I agree with this. They're also in a very bad position, which is why China had to advance their economic boost as fast as they could because of what he's talking about, what Jim D mentions here. China does have a major issue because of older age, lower fertility, the one child per couple. So then you basically have two people taking care of both sets of parents and themselves based on the generation, right? And culture. So you have a family of two, one child. So they're taking care of the three of them plus the two sets of parents, so they're taking care of seven people. And so it does have a major impact on the economic well-being of the country, of the individuals, as they try to push into a more capitalist form of economy. And China's always had that conflict, right? Communism politically and capitalist economically, and they try to blend the two. When a business gets to a certain size, the country steps in, and the Republic of China, they get a seat at the board of that company. So that company is no longer a private company. It's now relatively controlled by the government of China, by the Communist Party, of China. And so that also becomes a major issue. Are there real
we had a lot of friends working
how do they actually act?
We had friends working in private banks in Latin America, and then Chinese, I think it was this Chinese National Bank, CNBC, I think they came in and they bought like the largest banks, the largest buildings. They took over, man, silently 5, 10 years ago. And when these guys were working for banks, they were basically, and they had to go to China for training. They were in Latin America. They made them go to headquarters. They had to sit there to do some trainings, and then the party will bring in and do their sessions. They'll pick an hour, and then everybody will have to step out of their meetings or whatever they were doing, and they'll go to a party union CCP meeting in the office. They will put into a separate room. No non-Chinese coming into that meeting. They have to stay outside. The bureaucrat from the government will sit down and give them their discourse. 1 hour or 2 hours later, out of that meeting. But it's mingling of the government into your business. It's radical, it's wrong, it's controlling, and it's unfortunate. And that's exactly what we're going to start seeing in New York if this guy gets elected.
Right. It's exactly what they were. And we played Elizabeth Warren's clip earlier. You know, it's exactly what he was talking about. It starts with the grocery stores. Think about the takedown of Venezuela and other areas. They started incrementally taking over certain areas. It seemed like it made sense, right, to the people. They're like, yeah, that makes sense. Let's let them do their, it's just a little bit. They just want to help, you know, people get access to grocery stores and food. And then it's like, oh, we don't need to take our guns out of the house. We don't need to buy ammunition. We don't need to defend ourselves. Then it was, it's okay. Let them take over the golf courses in wealthy neighborhoods and put tenement housing there. You know, that's okay. We'll let them do that. You know, and then little by little, all of a sudden, now you have no country left.
Yeah. Also, we saw a little bit of what happened with the recently with the tariffs. All the luxury brands, Louis Vuitton, Salvatore Ferragamo, all of these luxurious brands, the guys turn around and say, hey, if you're not going to buy them, we're going to sell them to you directly at cost, right? So they infringe on all the non-disclosures, they infringe on the IP, they infringe on everything. They turn around, instead of paying your $2,000 for a pair of shoes, I'll sell them for you at the cost, which is $50, $60. So this also show a little bit when you're doing business with people in China. If there's a crisis, they won't hold to their commitments. They won't hold to their principles. I mean, we knew that was happening, but it's just like this all the marketing they do, that these are Italian shoes, these are French shoes, these are made in Italy. They're made in China. They're just branding and finalizing probably. But it's every large corporation is doing the same thing. All of them, Procter and Gamble, factories over there, Unilever, huge factories. They're producing at low cost. They do this, and we don't know, or we don't. If we dig into it, it's like the whole industry has something going on in China because it's so cost advantageous.
There you go. Daniel Smith. I love Brazil. Last November during the G20, there were more Chinese flags than Brazilians. Made me rethink retiring there. There you go. That's a really interesting point, especially considering how hard it is to get into the Brazilian economic system for trade. You know, so to bring product in there, you go through, all sorts of hoops to try to sell a product there to get registered in Brazil. They'll always give preference to an indigenous made product, or they'll create whatever, cooperation with one company, but just getting that product in, so the fact that, China is, maybe they're trying to get a stronger foothold there, but I know China had operated throughout Latin America with a lot of different products, and a lot of those products, a lot of the companies in Latin America in the beginning, they're like, yeah, bring all the Chinese products in, especially like in the medical space. And then eventually, people are like, well, these products aren't any good. We don't want them anymore. China came in cheap, but we don't want those products. And so they turn back to some of the bigger brands. And then you find out, to your point, some of the bigger brands are making their products over in China. So it's just like a vicious cycle. But I think we got to wrap. We're actually on a lot longer than we normally are. Normally we're on like an hour, sometimes Saturdays we go over. We're at this hour and 45-minute. Do you have any parting comments? You want to say anything about what you're doing here locally, or do you want to save that for another show?
Yeah, no, we can save it for another show. No, but no, thank you so much for having me here. I mean, like what we're trying to do in Cooper City, this is a nice neighborhood, nice area, nice city, very family. So I think we have a great opportunity to keep doing things well down here, and we're trying to get a lot of people aware what's going on and to become more participative on what's going on in the city, and that's it. I mean, it's nothing more than that. We're focusing on security, definitively. We're trying to enhance and make infrastructure, make sure that things are running the correct way, and the focus is going to be also on the community. How do we make people how do we build an environment for people to thrive and their families to thrive here in Cooper City? So that's basically the three topics that we'll talk further.
Yep, awesome. Love that. And Monkey Business said that before you know it, Jeff's working in Congress and Elizabeth Warren is holding 90% of the Yeti. Our Yetis are our NFTs.
Okay.
I can show them to you afterwards. So everyone, we do our giveaway typically on every show, but my song didn't come together today, so we're not going to be doing the giveaway. We're going to do it tomorrow. But when we give the giveaway, the funny thing is that if you don't win when we do the drawing, then we have a way to do the giveaway software that is used, and it's random. It's randomized, but you'll see people take away, and it's funny, So everyone who loses just claims that our system is rigged. But just some parting comments here. And Daniel, correct, 40% tariff on U.S. electronics in Brazil. Great show. Appreciate you and JC for the show today. Thanks, Jeff and JC.
Thank you. Nice to meet you guys.
Yep.
I need to try the Yeti coffee too. Do you have the Yeti coffee?
Yeah. So let me just play that before we head out of here. I'm gonna play the words behind it, and I'm gonna put it up here on the screen.
And roasted beans straight to your cave monthly, without burning your wallet.
If it actually plays.
No fluff, no fads, just fucking great coffee. Hand-picked, small batch, roasted, Yeti approved. Hoda join the rebellion. Drink like a legend. Badass YETISCoffee.com. The percolation never stops.
Very nice.
So you get your Badass Yeti coffee at BadassYetisCoffee.com. And we're actually getting ready to rebrand Badass Yetis Coffee into Badassery Coffee. So that's going to be pretty exciting. Got the whole Badassery theme getting ready to rebrand, and the coffee is going to be right at the top there. So it's badassery.coffee is going to go live soon, if it's not live already. Let me see if that's actually active. Badassery.coffee. I'm not sure if we had that. No, it's not up yet. Eventually that will be. Oh, I spelled it wrong.
Yeah, it's there.
Badassery. Well, Badass Yetis Coffee is there. The question is if we Badassery. Let me see if we. No, we didn't point it yet. That's all right. Badass Yetis coffee.com is definitely live and it's up. Get your bag. It's fresh roasted. What's unique about Badass Yetis coffee is that when you order it, it gets roasted, packaged, and then shipped. So it's not a coffee that sits on a shelf for a couple months getting stale. That's the key. It's really good quality. Really good stuff. That's it. So that's it. That's all we got today. I'll look forward to seeing everybody back here on the show with us Sunday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Oh, but that's tomorrow night. And so looking forward to tomorrow. We will do the Badass Yetis giveaway tomorrow. I think we're going to give away one from the White Tribe. I'd actually picked it out. So we have him ready to go for tomorrow night. And with that, we will check you guys out on the next one. Jeff, JC, out. We are out of here. Hang in there for a minute.
Are you down with OTC? Please like, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified when the next video drops. Are you down with OTC? Please like, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified when the next video drops.